I was originally harsh on Pikmin 3 when it first released in 2013. There was a solid 9-year gap in between 2004's Pikmin 2 and this entry. The problem with that is the fact that I got too hyped and expected a huge game that would dwarf Pikmin 2 in size, but that just didn't happen. In fact, it could very well be argued that Pikmin 3 is less content than Pikmin 2, but with each playthrough I grew more and more attached to Pikmin 3. The adrenaline rush of seeing how much one can get done in one day is still super effective here, so let's talk about it. Pikmin 3 was originally released on the Wii U in 2013. It is a sequel to Pikmin 2 on the GameCube. Originally planned for the Wii, Miyamoto and his team decided to move Pikmin 3 to the Wii U because it had the ability to output HD graphics. Pikmin and Pikmin 2 were ported to the Wii as part of the New Play Control series because Miyamoto wanted to test the Pikmin control scheme on a Wii remote. Luckily, this control scheme was carried over into Pikmin 3 because it's the best way to play in my opinion. It received pretty positive reception and sold a modest 1.25 million sales. Well, that's all the basic stuff out of the way, so let's jump into the story. Pikmin 3 revolves around a new planet this time, and it's called Kopai. The people on this planet are apparently horrible at planning and manage to almost run out of food. Thus, 3 explorers were sent out to explore other planets to see if they can extract any food from them, preferably fruits because they have seeds. The game revolves around 3 captains, Alph, Chuck or Charlie, and Brittany. Alph is the engineer of the group and is usually pretty cheery. Brittany is the botanist of the group, and she's gonna love the Pikmin when she sees them. Chuck is the leader of the group. He's not the brightest, but he's my favorite, damn it. As the leaders are traveling in the SS Drake, they get hit and crash land. What is up with the characters in this franchise? None of them can fly a ship, apparently. Olimar crashes in the first game, Pikmin 2, and even Hey Pikmin, I think. Chuck is the first one to wake up. He finds yellow Pikmin and tries to scare them away with his whistle. He then realizes that this actually lures them closer. Then he throws them to get them away from him, but the Pikmin end up destroying mushrooms nearby. Chuck realizes that not just the Pikmin don't want to hurt him, but they can also be useful. Chuck then enters a cave and gets eaten by a creature. Alph then wakes up and discovers the red Pikmin. He uses them to reach his Kopai pad, and god damn it, this is a genius way to make use of the Wii U gamepad and make it feel so natural. Alph then finds the SS Drake and takes off for the night, but the Onion, which is the Pikmin's mothership, follows him. Next, Alph lands in the Garden of Hope with the Red Onion landing with him. He finds a new type of Pikmin. This new type of Pikmin is literally a rock with legs, arms, and a stem. It's adorable as all hell. Alph finds the first fruit on the adventure too, which is a strawberry. Alph then uses the rock Pikmin to break a glass wall that has Brittany behind it. Now these two team up and to defeat the armored Crawmad. The creature spits out a phone which gives them information that they need to find Chuck. However, Alph displays his poor piloting skills once more and crashes again. Brittany gets stuck in a cave where she luckily meets some yellow Pikmin. She uses them to escape that damn cave and meet up with Alph. Then Alph and Brittany team up to rescue Chuck from the creature that ate him. The 3 of them discover that a fellow named Olimar stole their cosmic drive key, which they need to get home. The crew then returns to Alph's crash site to find the sand-belching mirror slug to get information on where to go next. The crew then reach a stage called Twilight River. There, they find Louie with the help of newly discovered wing Pikmin, but the crew thinks that he is Olimar. Louie then steals the crew's juice that they worked so hard for. The crew comes across a blue onion and uses the blue Pikmin to get Louie back. Louie tells them to go to the Forbidden Oak, where they will find Olimar and get the cosmic drive key and can go home. That's the basic story of Pikmin 3, and it has more structure than Pikmin 2, and especially the original. It's not necessarily a problem or anything, but it's something that I find interesting about the game. In Pikmin 1 and 2, there's basically one overall goal, and that was it. I guess you could argue in Pikmin 2, Olimar goes back for Louie after the debt is paid off, but here, there are twists and turns, like saving other captains from peril and catching that bastard Louie. The dialogue also doesn't get in the way too much, which is generally appreciated. Nintendo decided to put a bit more humor in there and a couple lines that actually got me the first couple times I played through it. So now, let's dig into the gameplay. Pikmin 3 is a real-time strategy game where the 3 leaders can take control over 100 Pikmin total at a time. These Pikmin are cute little plant creatures that can do many things for the captains. They are needed to fight enemies, carry fruit, complete bridges, destroy walls, among other tasks. Pikmin can bring enemy carcasses and pellets to their mothership to breed more of them. After the onion collects the carcasses or pellet, it will then plant them into the ground. Each Pikmin has a flower, bud, or leaf on top of their head. This determines their speed. Leaf Pikmin are slow as shit, meanwhile flower Pikmin are fast as hell. A leaf Pikmin can become a flower Pikmin in one of 3 ways. The first is to find nectar from an egg. 10 Pikmin can drink a single nectar pile. The second way is to leave them in the ground long enough after the onion plants them. The leaf on their head will become a bud and then a flower over time. Way 3 is to use the ultra spicy spray on your Pikmin squad. Any leaf or bud Pikmin will become a flower Pikmin. The spray makes the Pikmin hyper for about 40 seconds and they will move super quickly. It's neat for leaf and bud Pikmin to get upgraded from the spicy spray in this game. When the spray was used in Pikmin 2, their maturity state would not change. Another major thing that Pikmin 3 added was a third captain, and now they can be thrown too. This creates instances such as building the bridge to the Meyerclops that couldn't happen in Pikmin 1 or Pikmin 2. It's kind of neat to be able to go into such high places. Other ways Nintendo took advantage of this is by adding bouncy mushrooms that captains can fly off of. Speaking of 3 captains, this plays into possibly the best new feature to the game. and that is the Go There feature. Basically, what this does is allows you to pick a spot for a captain to go. You could say, tell Alph to go to the Onion to pluck some Pikmin, tell Chuck to go get some stray Pikmin, then play as Brittany to fight an enemy. When you master this shit, it's incredible. I love games where you multitask, and Pikmin 3 is hands down the best Pikmin in this regard. You could just get so much done in one day, and it's incredible. This compounds very nicely with the fact that the stages are much bigger than the first two games. There are actual screen transitions now, which is a neat touch. Two new Pikmin types are thrown into the mix, and these are the Rock Pikmin and the Winged Pikmin. The Rock Pikmin are, well, rocks, and they do massive damage on impact. The catch is that they don't latch onto enemies and are pretty damn worthless after that initial punch. They can't be squished by boulders, woollywogs, glass, and the like, which makes them a great type to use against those enemies. They also move slightly faster at carrying items, which is neat, I guess. They are literally just rocks with arms, legs, eyes, and a sprout, but goddamn, they're cute. The other new type of Pikmin are the Winged Pikmin. These are little pink Pikmin that can fly. I'm still not sure how I feel about these guys. Their attack power is weakened by a brutal half compared to yellow and blue Pikmin, so they are just terrible at fighting. They can carry items across gaps, and this can be a huge time saver. They can also lift those weird wooden bridges that have the pink handles on them, and they can also flip over clipboards that have the same pink handle. However, these Pikmin are somewhat janky. I've had it where they reach areas that are difficult for the whistle to reach. They also break some of the game's puzzles, such as the pair in the Twilight River. The Winged Pikmin can grab it one day, and then the next day it will magically just spawn over the rock wall that it was behind. Red, blue, and yellow Pikmin all return with their abilities mostly intact. Red Pikmin still have 1.5 attacking power and are immune to fire. Blue Pikmin can still go underwater, and yellow Pikmin can still be thrown high and have electrical immunity. Yellow Pikmin also have the ability to light up caves now, which is neat as hell. They also can dig faster than the other types of Pikmin for whatever reason. Unfortunately, blue Pikmin do not save other drowning Pikmin anymore, which is a shame. Blue Pikmin actually swim now instead of just submerging themselves. It's actually pretty cool to watch them swim after fish enemies. It should also be noted that all Pikmin can use bomb rocks. This is a welcome change, and the bomb rocks are super useful in this game. It seems Nintendo made it very easy for enemies to eat bomb rocks, and this will always result in a one-hit KO. The battling and overall handling of Pikmin in Pikmin 3 has been overhauled a bit. Instead of using the C-stick to make a swarm of Pikmin go any way you like, there's now a lock-on and charge feature. This is a welcome change. It is objectively better for fighting, but I find myself missing the C-stick swarm in music. It was neat to make the Pikmin dance around and avoid objects. But on the flip side, Pikmin are just much smarter in general. Pikmin don't trip anymore, which is revolutionary, I tell you. That shit was so annoying in the first two games. The Pikmin are more contained when following your captain, and it's rarer for them to fall behind the squad or get stuck behind a wall. They do a much better job of tracking the captain's movement in general. The throwing speed is slowed down a bit from Pikmin 2, but this is immediately forgiven as the throwing system is just simply much better in this game. It used to work like this. You would throw a Pikmin in the front of the line. When you grab the Pikmin, the rest of the matching color will move up the line. In theory, this works, but in practice, it doesn't. If you have to make a sudden movement, your Pikmin line is going to get screwed up. In Pikmin 3, though, it's locked and loaded. You pick a Pikmin type, and say you pick red. You pick a red Pikmin, and you throw the red Pikmin wherever they are in the squad. The type doesn't suddenly just change on you until you run out of that type. However, Pikmin 3 definitely took some steps back compared to the first two games, especially Pikmin 2, at least in my opinion. My opinion is the unpopular one, though, as Pikmin 3 is many of Pikmin fans' favorite. One of the big ones, though, is the captains themselves. They're just not as likable as Olimar and Louie were. The diary logs of Pikmin 1 and funny emails of Pikmin 2 were so great. These three just don't compare. Another thing that was sad to see disappear was the Piklopedia. I wasted hours reading that thing and throwing Pikmin carrots at enemies when I was younger. The biggest step back, though, in my opinion again, is probably the absence of caves. Many thought that caves slowed down and ruined the pacing of Pikmin 2, but I thought it was such a fun way to see so many enemies, and designing floors was much less work on the developers, and they were still fun. By extension of caves, Bulbin don't return, which is a sin. White and purple Pikmin were nerfed into the ground and are only found in the challenge mode. However, we get back to the positives. The challenge mode is an absolute banger in this game. Dare I say it's better than Pikmin 2. It's the same premise. You go around the stage and collect as much shit as you can before time runs out. There's 7 Pikmin types in total here, and they are red, blue, yellow, purple, white, rock, and winged. This is a great variety, and these levels, they never get old to me. I guess there's one downside, though. Most levels are DLC. I really wouldn't have thought that Nintendo would have been this ballsy enough to give such a small IP like Pikmin DLC, but here we are, I guess. I personally think it's very much worth it, as all DLC is around $10, and if you're a try-hard nerd like me, you're gonna 100% this shit. If you aim for all platinum medals, this will take you quite a few hours to plow through. To get a platinum medal, you have to take back every single piece of fruit, golden pebble thingy, and enemy bodies. This shit is super addicting to try to get best times in. That's only a third of it though, as there are two other modes, battle enemies and boss battles. The objective of battle enemies is, you guessed it, killing enemies. In order to get the platinum medal in a level, you have to kill every single enemy before the time runs out. Some of these are actually pretty difficult and can take a few tries. Obviously, the boss battle mode contains 5 boss battles that the player can rematch at any time. There's platinum medals in these too, and I believe it's only time-based. I'll get to the 5 specific bosses later when I cover the stages. Did I mention that it's 2 players? I have 6 damn siblings, so this shit is a blessing, and that makes these modes even better. The story itself is pretty short, but if one is willing to fork over the cash for the DLC packs, I'd argue that Pikmin 3 is a decent amount of content for a completionist at the time. I would argue that it's probably like 30 to 40 hours to 100% the game. There are other quality of life features that need to be touched on. The Gather Your Pikmin warning comes up way sooner than the 2 predecessors, and it shows how many Pikmin are stranded. Not just that, now there's a ring that appears outside of the onion. If idle Pikmin are past this line, they will not be safe when the day ends. I like this, as like the distance away from the onions to survive in the first 2 games felt a bit arbitrary, and I've lost Pikmins because of it. Pikmin won't lose flowers when they're shaken off of an enemy, and this is a really nice change as it makes it feel like you don't have leaf Pikmin that often. The gamepad is perfect for this game. Playing with the Wii Remote and the gamepad is pure heaven. Even with Pikmin 3 Deluxe on the Switch, like even though that's out, I still love playing this version from time to time to have that experience again. It's just too good of a control scheme for a game like Pikmin 3. Basically, you can use the amazing Wii Remote and have the gamepad right next to you, which will show you the map, stray Pikmin, and you can make use of the Go There feature. There's one more mode that needs to be covered, and that is the Bingo Battle mode. This is a 2 or 4 player mode where the players 1 and 2 will face off. Player 1 plays as Alph and player 2 plays as Olimar. If the 4 player mode is chosen, team 1 is either Alph and Brittany or Alph and Charlie, and the other 2 is Olimar and Louie. The 2 collect items to try to find a bingo board before the other one does. The items on the board consist of enemy corpses, fruit, treasures, etc. Each player's onion will have a macaroon with a flag by it. If this macaroon is stolen from the opposing player, that player will automatically win. This macaroon mode can be turned on and off at any time. Unlike the battle mode in Pikmin 2, there are Pikmin of different colors than red and blue, and each team doesn't have different colored Pikmin. Their leaves or flowers are used to represent what team they're on. There are 12 stages to choose from, and it's a solid time if you have a buddy or 3. Like the other 2 Pikmin games, I like to go over the stages, and if I'm being honest here, these stages slap so hard. As mentioned before, these stages are much bigger and they require screen transitions. Up first is the Tropical Wilds. This is where Alph first lands and discovers red Pikmin. The main boss here is the sand-belching Mirror Slug, and it needs 3 captains to reach. I like the variety of the enemies in the stage a lot. There's a calcified Crushblad, armored cannon beetles, shaggy longlegs, orange bulborbs, a whipton bulborb, among many other enemies. I think that the part near the start where you throw the captains up the hill with the armored beetles is neat. On the very top, you can get a nice view of the area. I also think the part in the middle with the tree stump is pretty clever. You have to use yellow Pikmin to make the other scale go up. I also love how that waterfall looks with the peach sitting on top of it. I also like how you can do this part as opposed to how Nintendo intended you to grab it. They intended for a blue Pikmin, make the stick out of that rubble, but I just charge with wing Pikmin every time. Just all in all, I really like this stage. The second location is the Garden of Hope. The rock Pikmin are discovered here the first time, and the blue Pikmin are discovered after Louie steals the gang's juice. I like how the first time landing here, there doesn't really seem like there's that much to do, but when you come back a second time, you'll have more Pikmin types in tow, and it really opens up. I kind of like it when games do that. It can make an old place seem like you just unlocked a new place. As you unlock the blue Pikmin here, they really shine in getting Louie back. There's a lot to do in the water, and there are plenty of enemies such as the puckering Blino, Spittlefish, and Toady Blaster that inhabit the water. I really like the concept of creating the bridge to get to the second boss. You need to chuck one captain onto the ceramic pot that you need to put back together, then throw another captain to the land across. I really like this because it's something that could not have been done in one of the first 2 Pikmin games. The cave part with the grapes and the bug-eyed Crawlmat is also pretty cool. The 2 bosses here are the Armored Maudad and the Quaggled Mireclops. This may also have my favorite music track in the game, and I think it's a very solid stage. The third location is the Arctic Tundra. Yellow Pikmin are originally found here by both Chuck and Brittany. I like this one's gimmick of the 2 captains being split up and they have to work together to get back together and save Chuck. It puts Pikmin 3's amazing multitasking abilities to the test. The cave part is a nice standout where we can see our good old buddy, the Mama Bullbear. Fighting the Venomoth Fossbat is pretty neat too. I like how its weakness is light and how this ties into the new Yellow Pikmin ability. There's also the Dodge Whistle here, which I gotta take a second to talk about. When this is brought back to the SS Drake, it'll allow the player and their current Pikmin squad to do a roll left or right. This is really the only power-up that I go after, as the other ones are just suits to make you immune to elements or take less damage overall. They're somewhat useful, don't get me wrong, but the whistle is so much fun to let it rip. It can also save a whole squad from untimely boulder too. I love the snowy theme and it looks beautiful with the HD graphics. This stage is pretty cool in my book. Up next is the Twilight River, and this is one is pretty interesting. I like the idea that they were going for, but damn, it's annoying when you're running for a lily pad and you end up just missing it. This is the place where the gang find the winged Pikmin and Louie initially. That being said, the winged Pikmin do a lot here. There are just simply plenty of clipboards they have to flip over, gates they have to lift, they're super useful against the boss, and them carrying fruit in general is super useful because they can bypass all that lily pad nonsense. There are bridge pieces that they have to carry over because it's across water and you don't have blue Pikmin at the time. It seems like they just do virtually everything here, and carrying the other types, they just kind of feel inconvenient to lug around. Some highlight enemies include the Snagret, the Toady Boister, and the 3 giant sleeping orange Bulborbs. The boss is the Scornet Maestro, and it's a flying bug that plays a tune. When it plays this tune, it sends out little Scornets to attack the captains and their Pikmin. Cool idea for a boss, but it results in a boss that's stupid easy. It acts like the Ranging Boister in Pikmin 2 in the way that it only locks on to an active captain. I'd argue the stage is pretty neat overall. The lily pad gimmick makes it stand out a bit. The final stage is the Formiddible Oak. Where do I begin? This stage is very divisive among Pikmin fans. I've read plenty of reviews and thoughts online stating that they got to this part and just stopped playing. They didn't finish the game. On one hand, I get it. You don't collect fruit here. It really takes the time management and multitasking aspects of Pikmin to a whole new level. I've seen lots of people say, this isn't what Pikmin's about, while others will say, hey, this is Pikmin at its best. I'm personally in the middle. I loathed this stage when I was younger, but after multiple playthroughs and getting better at the game, the stage actually kinda rocks. The basic idea is to carry Olimar out of the place when you have the Plasm Wraith chasing you. You have one captain lead Olimar, who's usually Brittany, while the other 2 work on clearing a path. It's definitely a bit stressful the first few times, and having to move Olimar around every few seconds is annoying, but it grew on me, man. The multitasking portion of Pikmin is here in spades, but without collecting any fruit, it definitely does seem like an element of Pikmin gameplay is missing. After the crew safely gets Olimar out of the cave, the Plasm Wraith reveals its final form. It uses the Plasm to fight the Pikmin, and apparently this Plasm has the ability to turn into other hazards. Glass will crush Pikmin, fire will burn them, water will drown them, electricity will stun them. Once in a while, it will fly and the winged Pikmin can take them down. But honestly, just use rock Pikmin. These little guys can't get pierced and eaten by it, making them the most valuable type. It's kind of like how in Pikmin 2 encouraged the player to use all different types of Pikmin to defeat the Titan Dweevil by it having access to all hazards, but yellow Pikmin are just simply the best type. Eventually, the crew defeats it and Olimar is revealed to have the Cosmic Drive key. Then the Copians offer the Hokatations a ride home. Depending on how many fruits the player grabbed, a different ending will be displayed. It's just text ending though, so it's not nearly as cool as, say, the original's different endings. One thing that kind of annoys me about this game is that there isn't a post-game. The original also had this problem, but at least in Pikmin 1's defense, you can have 3 files. Here, though, you can only have 1. Since this game is on the Wii U, you can create a new profile, but I find this to be a weird oversight. I love how Pikmin 2, you can go back to the planet if you want, even after collecting all the treasures. Maybe you just want to see how many Pikmin you can grow. Maybe you want to see your enemy kill count get higher. Maybe you just want to see how many days the timer can go up to. In Pikmin 3, though, and the original for that matter, you can't go back to the planet. It's one of those things that many people would say, who cares, just start a new file, dipshit. But I'm weird like that. I like when I can just throw hundreds of hours into a single save file, like Pikmin 2, Digimon World, The Witcher 3, or Skyrim. It's fun to start the game over and over again, but I'd like to have that one file that I could just throw playtime at and discover new things about the game with. Pikmin 3 is an amazing game. I've given it an unfair amount of hate over the years, but the strong gameplay and stage design more than make up for its shortcomings. Things such as the Go There feature and the tweaked Pikmin AI make this feel fresh but also familiar to the previous Pikmin outings. It really plays into the Pikmin series' strengths. Many will complain about the game's length, but as I talked about in my original Pikmin review, this just makes it infinitely replayable. To grab all the fruit only takes about 8 hours or so once you get the hang of it, and this makes it very easy to pop in and just knock out in just a couple of days, or maybe even one if I'm lazy that day. The HD graphics, the cute Pikmin traits, the amazing control schemes, and the amazing mission mode push this game from great to amazing. Pikmin 3 is definitely one of my favorite games of all time. A 7 out of 7 was inevitable, but I just love this franchise so much.